Hey, Michael J.
It's been like a few weeks since we talked about bands, so maybe let's talk about like three.
Well, dude, last week they took the week off of banning, and they told everybody they were gonna. I think they're trying to ease people back into the idea of there not being weekly bans, but they're not ready yet. And there were three more today, and wow, were they doozies. These are three, like if you were to take 10 of the cards that were like the most dangerous, most warping, most defining, they hit three of them right now. And this is, I'm talking like including all the cards that have already been banned. Like these three are pillars. Well, and it's a whole new world now.
I think if you didn't know that much about Pioneer, you had just only been loosely following the format, and somebody said, pick three cards for them to ban this week, you would have gotten two easily. Like, easily gotten two.
You might have got three, I think.
I wouldn't have gotten three. I think the
Which one would you not have gotten?
I would have definitely gotten Smuggler's Copter. I would have definitely gotten Once Upon a Time. I wouldn't have gotten Field.
Oh, see, I would have definitely got Field. To me, Once Upon a Time and Field are the definite ones. Copter was banned in other formats, so I think you guessed that one too.
Yeah.
But suffice it to say, a lot of like very powerful, understandable bans.
So
go ahead, yeah.
I mean, I'm a little sad about Copter.
I'm not just a little sad, I'm very sad. I could imagine it being right, but I am suspicious. I think that it may actually have been a mistake, and I hope they at least consider potentially going a different direction.
Like unbanning Copter?
Yep.
So I'm sad about you probably put a lot of thought into this. I'm just sad about Copter, but I can tell you why, but
please do. First. No, please go ahead.
All right. So for me, when Smuggler's Copter came out, it was obvious, it was like slam dunk when that card came out. Correct me if I'm misremembering this. It was like one of the first, 4x8 32 top eights, right? Like for the first SCG event, all 8 decks had 4 Copters. I want to say.
Well, that's the first moment that we read the card on the show. Yeah. We lost our minds. It was like
it's dumb, right?
This card is literally busted.
So it was it was one of those cards that like I whiz bang immediately bought a set of Copters, and I've just never been able to play them. They've never been legal to play in paper tournament in any format that I've ever played. So I just wanted to play.
Wait, didn't you play in Hawaii?
I don't think I did. No, I don't. Maybe not.
You didn't play in Hawaii? I thought you played in Hawaii. Maybe I'm misremembering.
I don't think so.
When I don't know, because I played green white in Hawaii with Smuggler's Copter, but I don't know. I might be thinking of a different one.
Here's my problem in life, right? So I bought the Copters, and then I was enamored of that like blue-red energy deck, so I played that in Standard for a while before it got banned. I'm a dummy. All right, I'm dumb. It's my own fault. There we
go. Now the truth comes out.
Yeah, but I'm just saying I never got a chance to play it, but they've been rotting in this binder for 3 years or whatever, and I was just like, this is a great new format. It seems like a perfect. It's good. Don't get me wrong. It's good. A lot of people
like the best card. It's one of the best cards
in the format.
It's one of the best cards.
But there's always going to be a best card in the format. I think it seemed perfectly fair to me for the Pioneer format, and so, it's not even played in every aggro deck.
So here's the problem with Smuggler's Copter being banned here. This card is extremely fun. There's a lot of gameplay to it. It has great incentives. It has deck building decision from turn to turn, and since good creature like use of creatures. It can smooth out your draw. It has synergies. There's so many things to like about it, and yeah, it's at a very high power level. But like, it's a fun card that doesn't have a home. I think it's really sad that it's not at a power level that is like functional for Modern, really. And at the same time, they banned it from Pioneer. And I don't know that they needed to ban it from Pioneer. I know they needed to do something about the mono black deck. But the heart of
the mono black deck, it seems good to me that a mono black deck with these random one drops was winning.
Well, yeah, but not at this rate. This is too much. But setting that aside, here's the thing about the banning Smuggler's Copter as your quote unquote way to go after the mono black deck. What's the value of a replacement for some of these things? Because Smuggler's Copter was played in a lot of decks, which is part of the reason why it's an appealing ban, is to promote more diversity. It's a little homogenous. But here's the thing: in a mono black deck, you already have you have more 1-drops than you could possibly want, right? Like Bloodsoaked Champion and Knight of the Ebon Legion are actually fantastic. Without Smuggler's Copter, you're going to cut Night Market Lookout and play a different 1-drop, whatever you want. There's like a whole bunch of options.
Lookout stinks in non-Smuggler's Copter days.
Right, but like you're gonna go play like Gutterbones or something, some other creature
that has natural 2 power instead of something that fakes 2 power, right?
So then the thing is, your 2-drops in this deck were Scrap Heap Scrounger and Smuggler's Copter. Without Smuggler's Copter, and keep in mind, Smuggler's Copter adds new dimensions to this deck. You've got another flyer, and then it's like when you have Spawn of Mayhem, Rankle, and Smuggler's Copter, there's a little bit of a definition there.
Nice.
Smuggler's Copter.
Nice stuff going on.
Smuggler's Copter gets you played Night Market Lookout, which is a little different than just playing another Jackal Pup, right? So, but when you cut Smuggler's Copter, which gave you an artifact too, incidentally, it's like nice that people could actually play with artifact destruction and have it be relevant. But when you cut Smuggler's Copter, what do you replace it with? You replace it with Pack Rat.
Oh.
This deck has 4 Mutavaults. It's mono black. And it has a bunch of cards that are good to discard to a Pack Rat. Smuggler's Copter is not a perfect fit with Pack Rat, and the reason you didn't play Pack Rat before is because you had Smuggler's Copter, and Smuggler's Copter is a little bit better. Now you just play Pack Rat. Guess which card is really fun, and guess which card is really not fun?
Well, Pack Rat is not fun at all.
For anybody. Right.
It's not even fun for the Pack Rat player.
No. So now it's by contrast, what if you were to imagine that they had banned Scrap Heap Scrounger? It's not like they could, if you just put Pack Rat in instead of Scrounger. Pack Rat Smuggler's Copter is not a great combo.
That doesn't make sense. But Scrounger is a sweet combo with Smuggler's Copter, and it's a pretty good combo with Pack Rat.
Yeah, but if you cut the Scrounger, the Smuggler's Copter is weaker. But also the deck, but you still have some combos. You still have Bloodsoaked Champion, and if you want, you could play, one of the other. But like Scrappy Scrounger is just at an otherworldly rate compared to the other recursive creatures. It's not like if you play like the Spoiler or whatever that you're anywhere close to the power level of Scrounger.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get a lot of arguments from people. Like we even talked about in Standard that Scrounger was like a ban-eligible card. Like they never banned
totally.
It. But that guy got 31 copies in a Pro Tour once.
To me, I think Scrounger's still going to be a problem at some point.
Well, if they're banning it's at some point it's just one of the top 5 most powerful cards in the format, right? Like at some point.
So but whereas now, like, let's look at a different deck. What if you were to play like one of those blue-red decks, like with Ensoul Artifact? They don't really have any. If they lose Smuggler's Copter, it's not like their next best card is like a 1/2 for 2 with no abilities. That's their next best card. So I don't know, man. I'm definitely sad about it. But on the other hand, I do think that it contributes by far to like more than almost any card to the homogenization of the format. And so, it makes me very, very sad. It is understandable, and you gotta pick how much are you going to cut down. If you're only going to ban a few cards, it'd be a lot easier to live without Smuggler's Copter. But at this point, it looks like that they have banned enough stuff, and they're going to keep banning. The Smuggler's Copter very likely has got to go. So it makes me sad, but I understand it.
Do you think that Mono Black was runaway the best deck in the format?
Yeah, definitely.
I thought that Smuggler's Copter was probably the best card in the format, and I would have loosely been like, I like Mono Black. I think that it's close to the best deck, if not the best deck, but it didn't seem like an offensive deck to me, right? Like
that's not, but it is offensive in terms of when it's consistently putting up, like when it's consistently 40% of the metagame, and it still has an incredible win rate.
Yeah,
it's not that the play pattern's bad; the play pattern's fantastic. It's just way too strong. It's probably too strong now by a fair bit.
Really? You think?
Yeah, I don't think that cutting Smuggler's Copter for Pack Rat is going to make this deck not... If it's not the best deck, it's going to be one of the best decks. I just think it's going to be a lot closer, a lot more fair. You got to also remember that now you don't have to deal with Once Upon a Time out of the other decks.
Oh, well, that's a big one. I mean, I got it wrong for Standard. I didn't think they were going to ban Once Upon a Time in Standard. I was clearly wrong about that. but I was pretty sure they were going to ban it in Pioneer.
Dude, they're banning it in Modern.
It's
Just wait.
so let's look at some results for a second. This Pioneer PTQ that was on MTGO a couple
Yeah.
days ago, the winning deck. I mean, this is a deck that got pretty beat up by these bans, right? It played both Smuggler's Copter and Once Upon a Time. 4 Once Upon a Time and 2 Smuggler's Copter in the main.
Yeah, and the only reason they only play 2 Copters main is they also had 2 Hardikiran's main, because Hardikiran is just so fantastic with the combination of Lovestruck Beast and Oko. And, there's also Steel Leaf Champion. But the thing, you see, one of the things you can do is, like, when you can just drop Lovestruck Beast and immediately get in there with Hardikiran, you're putting a lot of pressure on your opponent. And then Oko is obviously a fantastic interaction with Smuggler's Copter, with Hardikiran, just because Oko has such an absurd amount of loyalty to begin with.
Well, both of them.
And then Hardikiran is so fantastic in this deck because it's a Stubborn Denial deck. And in fact, I would use 4 Stubborn Denials anyway. Partly, now the Smuggler's Copter's out of the way, I think you could play 3 Hardikirans, and I think Hardikiran's Stubborn Denial is kind of a nice interaction.
It's cute, too. It's one of those ones people don't see.
Yep, where you can just be like, at instant speed, remove a counter from my Oko. Boom, Hardikiran's is a creature, so that Stubborn Denial only costs 1 and is a hard counter.
So I'm looking at this blue-green deck that won the PTQ, played by the ironically named Mountain Master 13, played a blue-green deck. Like, it's awesome to me if this is one of the best decks in the format, right? Like,
really? Are you sure?
Aside, I love it.
Why? How much interaction is there? This deck is so repetitive.
I love about Pioneer, and maybe this is just because the format's so young and I haven't had time to become jaded. Like, I'm super jaded about Modern play patterns at this point, right? Modern was real fresh to me at one point too. But like, when was the last time that the best deck in the format was like, a Gilded Goose, Mystic Land or Elves into Lovestruck Beast, Ronus, Oko, and Steel Leaf Champion on the 2, and then I get these cards are overpowered.
No, that's not the problem.
Like Heart and Smuggler's Copter with Oko, like he's powering everybody.
But that's not the part that, see, Smuggler's Copter is one of the cards that I actually liked the play pattern of in this deck.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is that this deck is okay. So let's say this deck. It's one thing if this deck is just like a role player in the metagame. But let's say this deck was one of the best decks, one of the absolute best decks. Like, let's say this was 25% of your experience you're playing against this deck.
Yeah.
How many decisions? Like, what are the games like when your cards are 5/4? First of all, you have 4 Elvish Mystic, 4 Llanowar Elf, and 2 Gilded Goose. So you have 10 different accelerators. Gilded Goose has a little bit of play to it, but you have 4 Llanowar Elves, 4 Elvish Mystic, and 2 Gilded Goose in a deck with 4 Once Upon a Time. That's an absurd amount of repetition. The game always begins the same on turn 1. It's always the same thing.
Elf into Lovestruck Beast, let's go.
But that's not like, it's not like that's particularly different than Elf into Steel Leaf Champion.
Yeah, it's not. It's
very, very, very repetitive, and it's not like the cards do anything. No, you just put them down and they're giant bodies
for 2.
Right, but that's not like a great experience to be 25% of your opponents. Oko has some play to it. It's too powerful, but it has some play. Stubborn Denial has some
good guys.
So Oko, I'm trying to look at cards in this deck that do anything. Right? Like, it's not like Ronos and Wicked Wolf, those involve decisions. Hardikiran, decisions. I think that it's kind of obnoxious how many of the cards in this deck all just do the same thing. It's fine. I think that it would be nice if this was not actually the best deck.
So I think that they have to probably assume that the idea of having a Pioneer format is ultimately going to be a good idea.
I think it's a great idea.
Assume that. Yeah, I think so too. Assume that for a second. I think that the path they took with letting everything go and then like banning inwards to try to get to the nut of the format in a way that like is livable before it becomes a Pro Tour format was a pretty good idea. And some of the problems with it are predictable and similar to some of the initial problems with Modern, right? Like if you're going to have so many available sets, but not have like a lot of available force of wills, then of course there's going to be like a concentration of powerful aggro decks, right? Like there's just a huge
Well,
redundancy
not
in one drop
necessarily.
accelerators. Like that's a thing.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily a problem you would have. It just happens to be the case that they haven't, like, of the cards they've made a lot of redundancy of and made a lot of push versions of. Fast aggressive cards are some of those compared to the removal. It doesn't have to be that way. It's
Well,
just that's an easy story to tell when you have the benefit of looking at what cards are winning right now.
I think that you can look at the kinds of cards that they print in many sets over the course of time and say, like, all right, we print a lot of cards that are black, red, or white 2-power creatures for
Yeah, but that's not what the problem in the format
no,
at
no. I'm just
all.
saying, like, as an example, that's
Yeah, but those aren't even good.
yeah, but like one man accelerating elves is a thing that are always good, right? They're good whenever they're printed in standard.
Yeah.
And like this is kind of like a mega standard format, and you get additional redundancy and additional consistency by playing a lot of those cards, but you don't get very much if you play like a lot of different kinds of deafening clarion, right? That's what I mean. Like,
Yeah, I know, but you do from Thoughtseize. Like there's Llanowar Elf, Elvish Mystic, and Gilded Goose.
yep.
Can you imagine if there was Thoughtseize, Inquisition of Kozilek, and another one?
Oh well, that would be different, yeah, because they're fast also.
Well, that's my point. Is that which kinds of cards there are extra redundancy of? Nobody cares about the 17th Jackal Pup. Not anymore. That ship has sailed. It's just that there's certain things in the format that are constricted. Like for instance, there's very good playable permission, or very little playable permission. Whereas there's an abundance of busted 3-cost planeswalkers. Part of what makes Oko slightly less offensive than he would otherwise be is the fact that there's also Liliana and there's Teferi and there's Narset. You know what I mean? There's all these like absurd planeswalkers. There's not an analog to Thoughtseize. The reason the black deck was so busted is that first of all, Thoughtseize is just the best card, but also Fatal Push is uncommonly good for removal, and it was the best Smuggler's Copter deck, and Mutavault is fantastic. So, like, and that's to say nothing of just little tactical things like Scrappy Scrounger is so powerful.
Oh, it's going to be
So
hilarious.
far, the format hasn't.
Mutavault was already one of the best cards in the black deck, and the banning of Smuggler's Copter is probably just going to make Mutavault better.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
that's hilarious.
Well, it's also, I think the banning of Field of the Dead is weirdly going to make Mutavault better. How about
sure.
that?
Field of the Dead was going to brickwall some of those Mutavaults. Like,
so
what was their job to tap themselves?
So Once Upon a Time was by far the most egregious card, and Field of the Dead was the card that was making things the worst. Like it was moving things in a bad direction.
So
Once Upon a Time was merely broken. Field of the Dead was perverting things in a bad way.
Talk to me about this Field of the Dead thing, because that's the one I wouldn't have gotten. It's not one of these cards that's in the flashy decks.
If you told me I was only allowed to ban one card, it would still have probably been Once Upon a Time because it's so busted.
For sure,
but I would love if the answer had been Field of the Dead, because Field of the Dead, it makes it so that you can't really play control or mid-range. It's like, if you look at the format pre-banning of Field of the Dead, it's nothing but fast aggro decks, combo decks, and what? Is there anything else?
Fast aggro decks, combo. I mean, there's some. Oh, I guess even Burn is like an aggro deck.
Yeah, because there's not enough burning spells, so you just play red aggro. Like, the format was nothing but aggro. Like, it was a paper, rock, scissors of sorts. There's 3 decks. Deck A there's a lot of different types of fast aggro decks. Deck B, there are a lot of different types of crazy combo decks that are not necessarily the fastest, most busted combo decks, but they prey on the fact that there's no force of wills, as you say. And then Pillar C is Field of the Dead ramp decks. And it's like, and they're not evenly split by any stretch of the imagination. The black deck is just so overwhelming. But Field of the Dead was just, I mean, a Field of the Dead might be a third of the metagame.
So I'm looking at like Gobo 2009. This deck from 4th place in the PTQ. I think it's pretty emblematic of a Field of the Dead deck. It's got
One of the two styles. There's
yeah,
two very popular styles, and this is one of the two most popular.
28 lands with 4 fields and mostly one-ofs of the rest of the lands, because of the text on Field of the Dead. One of the things that's super telling about this deck is it's got 28 lands and only 13 creatures, but 4 Once Upon a Time. To set up weird kind of creatures in some cases, right? So
Yeah, but you're not. It's not about finding the creatures in this deck.
you think it's just about finding the field?
Yes,
I mean,
and it's because why not find anything? You've got all these bullets. It's just there's no opportunity cost. If you can find an Arboreal Grazer or a Rejuvenator, great, more power to you. But it's just a free roll. I think if you cut for Once Upon a Time, you're going to want to go up. You're not going to want to stay at only 28 land.
oh yeah, I probably agree with you. I'm just thinking like in this deck, if you're Once Upon a Timing on turn 0 or turn 1 to set up first turn Arboreal Grazer, you're going to hit like 99% of the time, right? Like you're going to hit nicely.
You're saying if you have 4 Arboreal Grazers in your deck and 4 Once Upon a Times in your deck,
yeah,
you're not going to have a Grazer 99% of the time.
No. Your Grazer's always going to get his money. It's not like going to be like one of these things with the Grazer's stalls.
So where you just miss a land. Yeah. Oh, yeah, but even without Once Upon a Time, if you just have 28 land in your deck, your Grazer is going to get its money.
Grazer's great.
Grazer is phenomenal in this deck.
I'm saying like you have a high incentive to want to try to hit the Grazer then. So.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. You'd want to hit the Grazer whenever you can. It's just that you don't. This isn't one of those decks where that's like the primary. Like, for sure, you're going to want to take it. But I think the fact that your buyout, like every Field of the Dead this version draws, is so good.
Yeah.
But part of the thing going on in this deck, it's not just Field of the Dead. So Field of the Dead is one half of the thing. The other half is Hour of Promise. Hour of Promise, 4 and a green, search your library for up to 2 land cards, which could be the same if you wanted, and put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Then if you control 3 or more deserts, create 2 black zombie creature tokens. So to begin with, this deck is capable of triggering Hour of Promise. You see, between the 4 Once Upon a Times and the 3 deserts it has, like it's got Ifnir Deadlands, Haship Oasis, and Desert of the Indomitable. So with three different deserts, and it's nice that they're different deserts too, incidentally, when you have a Field of the Dead deck. So one of the things that can happen is if you draw any one of those 3 deserts, whether natural or from Once Upon a Time, you have the option to Hour of Promise for the other 2 and make 2/2/2 blockers in a hurry, like if you're getting beat down. I think that first of all, I don't think Field of the Dead getting banned is going to ban this deck. I think this version is the wrong way now because this version is built to make Field of the Dead as good as possible. Without Field of the Dead, you wouldn't want to play this style. But if you're going to play a ramp deck that used to be a Field of the Dead deck, I think you're going to want to look at something more like the style that Babysoft played in 10th place. So this is like a Eldrazi Tron deck, like a mono green Eldrazi deck, except that it doesn't have Tron.
Because there's not Tron, right?
Well, you have the different Tron. You do have a Tron. You see, your Tron is that you have 4 Castle Garen Briggs, and Babysoft only played 3 Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, but that's because they had access to Field of the Dead. I think you're going to play 4 Castle Garen Brig and 4 Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. And that's part of how you're Troning is that you've got these lands. You have 8 different lands that make 2 mana. And you're using them in conjunction with Hour of Promise, which can go get 2 of them. So it's like Hour of Promise is producing 4 mana for you. But it also has lots of utility. You could go get other stuff, Sometimes you could get deserts, and you can play a lot of deserts in this deck now that you don't Field the Dead in play. And sometimes you just go get other stuff like a Arch of Erazgar, Blast Zone, or Westvale Abbey, dope stuff like that. But this deck's also an Ugin the Spirit Dragon, Oblivion Sower, World Breaker, Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger deck that goes really big.
I love it. And I think,
and this deck I think is going to carry on.
Now, I love the fact that it's doing stuff with like colorless lands. I love stuff that there's like, the desert sub theme. Like I love that it's just exploring this space. And Field got banned. There was only even 2 copies of Field in this deck. It wasn't even like quote a Field deck.
Exactly.
Field.
Yeah, this deck is a Castle Garenbrig Shrine of the Forsaken God deck with Hour of Promise as the engine. It's just that it played 2 copies of Field of the Dead because why would you not?
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I think this path is a more promising next step. I think you could also consider, I don't think there's anything wrong with playing Thought Not Seer main deck, by the way. Like, you've already got 18 colorless mana sources, so, like, why not? You know?
What do you think about playing like a heavier desert theme, right? Like the second one is
Totally.
2 copies of Haship Oasis, but getting paid off on deserts is like one of the main things this deck can do.
Well, it's also got Desert of the Indomitable and Scavenger Ground. So it had 4 deserts, but I think you can actually play like 7. I think you, or 6 or 7. Like I would play more like, first of all, I would play 4 Hashep Oasis now.
That's what I was saying. Like Haship Oasis, I think is the best desert to actually get if you're trying to get stuff with Hour of Promise.
Or draw.
It's separately, if you're talking about playing Thought Not Seer, Haship Oasis taps for colorless.
Yeah,
Right,
but you're
so-
not even close to having a problem on the colorless. Because you're going to still play Westvale Abbey. You're going to still play Scavenger Ground. You're going to play the Sanctum of Ugins. You got all these Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. You got Radiant Fountain. You've got the Blast Zone and Arch of Arazka. So I still think you should play 4 Haship Oasis, but it's going to be trivial to play your Thought Not Seer in this deck.
How
And in
much
fact, Ubisoft has 4 in the sideboard.
how much do you love Jotty Offshoot in this deck?
I would sideboard it.
I'm in love with it.
I wouldn't main deck it though.
No,
I think you
I
already
wouldn't
got 4
main deck it either.
grazers. You're not gonna. Yeah, you got when you have 4 grazers. Let's be easy about how many walls of wood we put in our
Well,
decks.
yeah, but I mean, Grazer and Jotty Offshoot. Obviously the format is going to shift now with the Smuggler's Copter change. But if you were contending with a bunch of like 1/1 black creatures for 1 and 2/1 black creatures for 1, these guys do work.
Yeah,
They
they're
do
pretty good.
so much work.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think the Field of the Dead was just this oppressive force for making it so that nobody could really stretch the game out because too many other people just for free got to beat you with their land, you know? And I would be sad if Ramp got killed because of Field of the Dead being banned. Not as sad as Smuggler's Copter, but I'd be a little sad, but I don't think it will be because I think Hour of Promise is so strong in this format. And so I think we're going to see some Hour of Promise, Castle Garenbrig, Shrine of the Forsaken God type stuff.
What do you think about riffing on the same strategy as what Baby Soft was doing, but like go to blue instead of just being like mono green? I mean, there was
I think you can
so
pick
much
up
incentive to blue.
I think you can play either blue green or black green with no problem. If you want to pick up a second color, as long as it's one of the enemies for green, because I think that playing 4 Yavimaya Coasts in this deck is pretty close to free. And I think that you've got a lot of good selection to try to set the stuff up. The thing you want to be careful about is that if your blue cards are too cheap, then you might actually get them out of you can't. I think you can reliably, like I think playing blue on like having like for instance, I think Oko is a lot easier of an ask in a deck like this than something than like Growth Spiral, for instance. And now you might be able to play Growth Spiral, but there's a lot of problems with trying to play with cards that have 0 colorless in their cost that take both blue and green. Whereas I think Oko, you got a little flex spot and you got a little bit more time to set it up. You know, like for instance, if you have to play Oko on turn 4, no problem. But remember, when you're playing blue, how many sources are you actually going to play? Because at a certain point, like, okay, so you get to play Yavimaya Coast and you get to play Breeding Pool. But you got to be careful because the Castle Garenbrig part is actually really important. And this deck actually makes really good use of Nissa's Pilgrimage. Now, you are going to have to figure out how to reconsider the fact, like with Nissa's Pilgrimage, part of the value is that your Once Upon a Times were incredibly powerful for feeding Nissa's Pilgrimage's spell mastery.
Oh.
Without Once Upon a Time, there's this outstanding question of if Spellmaster, if you can actually still support. Now, it might be that
Yeah,
it's
but
just so good
the
because you put one in
non-spell
play when you're
mastery
hand.
version is still strong.
It is. It is. Well, but there's other options. Like, for instance, what about Natural Connection? That's the 2 and a green instant. Search your library for any land and put it on the battlefield. So the fact that you can just go get Castle Garenbrig or Shrine of the Forsaken God, and that it's a 2 for land. Nissa's Pilgrimage is only putting one of the 2 in play.
I have a question about Castle Garenbrig.
Yeah.
So this makes a lot of sense to me in this deck. So it's a 4 of in this deck. But in the other build, we also see, I believe, 1 Castle Garenbrig. I don't think it does anything in that deck.
Well, it still does, right? You're talking about in the 4th place deck we were talking about from Gobo?
There's like 1. I don't know what it does.
Castle Garenbrig?
Yeah.
Makes 6 mana.
For what?
Elvish Rejuvenator plus Tireless Tracker.
All right. I'll accept. I don't like it, but I'll accept it.
I mean, isn't the main reason is so that when you sideboard into your Oblivion Sower, Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, Worldbreaker sideboard plan, Castle Garenbrig is how you do it. You go Hour of Promise and you go get your Castle Garenbrig as a 2 for land to get you ahead of schedule.
All right. I like.
Because that's what you do, right? Like you're getting one of the God, where is it? Oh my God, was he just not playing the? Yeah, I guess he wasn't. All right, well I'm off it.
He's got other stuff. He's got the Oblivion Sower.
But part of it is the opportunity cost is just not that high. So
yeah,
I don't know.
It's rando text. It's fine.
Yeah, but I like it a lot more. I think it's unreal in Baby Soft's deck.
Oh, I mean, I kind of want to play 4 Oblivion Sowers in this deck, just because you have so many Castle Garenbrigs. Like,
I think you can do it. I think that when you only have 4, when you have to cut these 4 Once Upon a Times, this deck is not just trying to find the land. This deck needs to find World Breakers and Oblivion Sowers as part of what it's doing.
I mean, I think it's just like, do you remember that Pro Tour where Kibler and PV were like playing like the 75 card mirror in the finals? And it was just like one of those things where it's like whatever your deck has a certain configuration of ramp cards and big spells, you play the ones that you draw, right? And if that's it, you're still at a high power level, I think. And you're just happy to be there.
Yep.
I think you don't get to aim as much. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you don't play 1 Ulamog anymore, right? The Ugin can do a lot of that work. And I think like just the frequency of hitting.
I would play 1 I think you play 1 Ulamog for sure. You got Sanctum of Ugins.
Okay. Fair enough.
When you have access to multiple Sanctum of Ugins and ways to tutor up the Sanctum of Ugin, and you've got Worldbreaker to actually trigger the Sanctum of Ugin, there's no way I'm not playing an Ulamog.
I buy it. I'm just saying, like, if you're looking at this deck, which has 4 Nissa's Pilgrimage. Nissa's Pilgrimage costs 3 mana, puts a land into play. Implication is you have 2 lands from the 3, right? So you have the 4th land being put into play by the Nissa's Pilgrimage. You have the 5th land in your hand. If any of your first 5 lands is a Castle Garenbrig, you have Oblivion Sower ahead of time. That is too high of an incentive to not play additional copies, in my opinion.
Of Oblivion Sower?
Yeah. You got to play 4.
Okay. Here's another perspective. If you just Natural Connection on turn 3, you have 6 mana on the next turn. Like, you Natural Connection for Castle Garenbrig.
Well, I was saying, Castle Garenbrig's one of the.
I know you were counting on actually drawing the Castle Garenbrig. I'm saying that if you play with Natural Connection, you don't even need to draw the Castle Garenbrig. I'm not saying to cut Nissa's Pilgrimage. Keep Nissa's Pilgrimage if you want. I'm saying that if you're going to cut Once Upon a Time because it's banned now, you got to replace it with something. Some amount of Natural Connection seem incredible.
Maybe Natural Connection's better than Rejuvenator. Rejuvenator is very medium to me compared to that.
Might be.
Actually, that might hit Castle Garenbrig. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, but not as often as Natural Connection does.
It hits it 100% of the time, right?
If you want it.
What's not to want?
I think Natural Connection sounds good. I think Elvish Rejuvenator is nice as a chump blocker. Because like people play 2/1s and stuff, so just having a random 1/1 laying around is actually kind of nice.
I buy it. I buy it. I think like this deck is an inordinate amount of promise. I think I would be
Oh yeah.
real happy to sleeve up, close to this deck. Obviously, you got to cut Once Upon a Time. You got to switch Field of the Dead into what's wrong? There's no like creature lands in this deck. I guess maybe Westvale Abbey is kind of a creature land. I think
Yeah.
I would want to hide a threat in here. Do we have some way to draw extra lands here? I mean, draw
Okay,
extra
so
cards.
so first of all, you get to clean up your mana base. Once you cut Field of the Dead, you don't just swap 2 Field of the Deads for like a shrine and a creature land. You got to like cut a bunch of this weird stuff. Like right now, there's a Yavimaya Coast over here, a Llanowar Waste. Those should both be Haship Oases once you have no Field of the Dead. You don't want to play Crumbling Vestige anymore.
What is up with that card? That
what,
card is terrible, right?
No, it's just a different name. It's a way to play another land that produces colorless mana for your Thought-Knot Seer that can give you green early one time when you need it for your Grazer.
I mean, just in the abstract, the card is.
No, it's great. It's a smart card to exist. It's good. It's no worse than Tendo Ice Bridge.
Don't talk to me about Tendo Icebridge like that.
Dude.
You know how I feel about Tendo Icebridge. It was in every deck.
It's a little worse than Tendo Ice Bridge. But I'm saying...
in every deck.
Yeah.
Tendo Icebridge was frankly not very good in a lot of the decks I played today.
But that's actually part of it, though, is that this deck has Crumbling Vestige in it. Why does this deck have Crumbling Vestige instead of Aether Hub?
Wait, so the Vestige only gives you the trigger once, right?
It's just an Aether Hub that you got to use right now.
I'm going to reiterate this, so it doesn't seem very good to me.
Dude, Aether Hub, man. Aether Hub's pretty good. That's a good way to get your Thought-Knot Seer online. That's a Tendo Ice Bridge
I mean,
that puts its money where its mouth is.
Better than Tendo Ice Bridge.
No, it's not just better. It's mostly better, though.
Crumbling Vestige is just a little worse than Tendo Ice Bridge. They're substantially better.
Unless you've got some sort of an artifact, maybe, that untaps your lands that enter the battlefield tapped.
Okay, in that case, it is better and also much worse than other options you could play if you had such an artifact.
Yeah, true. But we should actually put a little bit of a focus on Once Upon a Time's other uses. First of all, dude, isn't like mono green just just continues to dominate, right? Like mono green, they ban more cards from it every week, and it just keeps winning. I don't think we're done yet. I think mono green is still a great deck.
See, I feel like
not just the ramp deck, but I'm talking about mono green devotion.
More exciting to me than mono green devotion, though.
I think so too.
Like devotion, I mean, obviously, all respect to devotion, is a good deck. Exactly agree with everything you said. It's putting up top 8s no matter what they're banning. But I mean, I don't know. This seems like less.
I don't know. Did you see the new style of green devotion? You might be into this. Like Floatius's 28th place deck.
I did not see that one.
Yeah, this one's a spicy little number. This is a new style of green devotion.
This is the hottest, newest thing, huh?
Yeah.
So, Cord Collected Company.
So this is a deck with Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, Elvish Visionary, Elvish Clan Caller, Dwinnen's Elite, Shaman of the Pack, Court of Calling, Collected Company. It was using Once Upon a Time, but you could just put something else in. It also was using Courser of Crufix because Courser of Crufix is quite good with Once Upon a Time, Collected Company, Court of Calling. It's a good get with your Collected Company. There's just a lot of good interactions with it, and you're going to have to revisit that a little bit. But I think that, Courser of Crufix, there's a lot to like about Courser of Crufix in this deck. But it's an elf deck. It's got this elf aggro plan.
Yeah, so this is like a fireball deck, right? You're using your chords and your collected companies to put Shaman of the Pack in play.
Yeah, you're trying to trigger Shaman of the Pack twice so that your opponent's dead. And in the meantime, you just sort of draw cards and make mana and draw cards and make mana.
I'm not that excited by this deck. It's fine.
No?
It's fine.
Okay.
I mean, it's like I've seen lots of decks like this over the years. They perform sometimes. There's like nothing spectacularly exciting to me about this, except maybe talk to me about Teamer Sabertooth. This is a non-elf creature in this deck. It costs two GG for a 4/3 creature, and it has some text. But surely that text must have some action here.
Yeah, you bounce Shaman of the Pack.
Yeah, and then you fireball them. That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, when are we going to get to the point where Mono Green Devotion has got what's that card that's like white and a 1 that lets you megamorph stuff? That's when I'm going to be excited by the Nykthos decks again.
Dude, well, so on that topic, did you see the green white deck that it either top 16 or top 32? Dude, this is a deck for the old you. Let me see. You know what I mean? Like this is so it's a Gideon Ally of Zendikar deck. Let's see. So it's a well, there's two different versions. So first, actually, the one that's not the Gideon deck that has the Gideons in the sideboard, Nola Gold played a white aggro deck it's a Thalia's Lieutenant deck with History of Benalia, Venerable Knight, Worthy Knight, Knight of the White Orchid, Knight of Grace, Dauntless Bodyguard, and then it's got Acclaimed Contender, and it's got Heron's Grace Champion.
So Heron's Grace Champion is the little green splash, right, in this otherwise white deck.
Well, once upon a time was the splash.
Yeah, well.
Because all you want to do in this deck, all you want in the world is to find Thalia's Lieutenants.
It just triggers everything, every guy, every leaves, every enters, messes up the opponent, right?
Well, Thalia's Lieutenant more than anything.
No, I'm saying if you have Thalia's Lieutenant.
Oh, yeah. From now on, everything is really bad.
Everybody's in.
But Heron's Grace Champion is interesting. I don't know if I would splash screen anymore once Upon a Time is out of the mix, but it's possible.
I mean,
it's not like the mana is hard.
I mean, is this... I guess if your opponent's like mono red or mono black and you've got the right battlefield, it's like a pretty back-breaking single move. But like, I don't know, it's not that exciting to me. Like, any of the long game decks or these, previously would have been field decks or decks that have mass removal kind of don't care about Heron's Grace Champion, do they?
Not really. How do you feel about Circle of Loyalty?
I was surprised to see it included in this list, but I suppose there's plenty of things that will help reduce the cost of Circle of Loyalty, like almost every creature.
Yeah, I mean, this deck is already a knight deck. It's got 4 Worthy Knights, giving you human tokens when you play knights. It's got 4 Venerable Knights for that incidental +1/+1 counter off your Jackal Pup. And then it's got 4 Acclaimed Contender, which makes it so that it's a 3/3 for 3 that when you play it, if you have any other knight, which this deck has a ton of, you get to look at your top 5 cards and take another knight and put it in your hand. In theory, you could also get an aura or an equipment, but this deck doesn't really play any auras and the aura equipment, so it's mostly just,
It's weird, there's very few...
You can get the legendary artifact, the Circle of Loyalty you can get.
Yeah, but like the Circle of Loyalty has this text: whenever you cast a legendary spell, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. It only has like not very many legendary spells, right? Like History of Benalia is a saga, but it's not even legendary, and Gideon is in the sideboard.
Yeah,
right. I would think I would kind of want to trigger it. That's all.
Yeah, that's part of my problem with the Circle of Loyalty is that I think that if you get this card, even if you're just playing all knights, I just don't think that spending, like, say you spend like 3 mana on this, I don't think you've got your money. I think you gotta trigger the legendary spell. Like, you gotta trigger the legendary spell at least once. So I don't like the Circle of Loyalty here, but the other kind of approach is like what about Spell Queller, man?
I mean, Spell Queller is one of my least favorite cards ever to play against.
Oh, actually, what about Mono Blue? Did you see in Mono Blue, I think is kind of interesting because it didn't get hit by the bans. It wasn't using Field of the Dead, Once Upon a Time, or Smuggler's Copter. But like Gennardi's 25th place deck is a good example of the blue devotion deck with Tempest, Jin, and Thassa, God of the Sea as your threes. And you've got Master of Waves for more devotion action. And what's interesting to me is that, first of all, you finally get to put side by side Cloudfin Raptor and Siren Storm Tamer, from two very different eras. You do got to be a little careful, though, because you don't want to go, I guess, yeah, it's not even that much of a problem, because, you got to be careful with Wizards of Retort how you set it up, but you have Curious Obsession for the Cloudfin Raptor, which is just fantastic.
I mean, I think this deck is real interesting to me.
I love Gadwick the Wizened here, by the way.
I knew you would.
I love it.
How does this deck have no Nissa? Nykthos trying to Nyx. Like, not even one?
Because it wants to play Tempest Jin.
Yeah, it's weird.
Tempest Jin, man.
Tempest
it's about
Jin is
Tempest
so powerful. But the Gadwicks in this deck are always getting cast for 4.
Or 3.
You think just for 3?
If it comes to that, I would play Gadwick for 3.
I guess in this deck, you're casting Gadwick for 3 and they're never blocking again.
Never blocking again. Ever. Plus, you've got flash creatures like Merfolk Trickster and Brazen Borrower.
I mean, if you flash down a Merfolk Trickster, they're really never blocking again.
And you've got Harbinger of the Tides, too.
All right.
This deck has a lot of flash.
Now you make me want to play 4 Gadwicks for 3.
Well, the problem is that Gadwick is it's a good 4 and it's a decent 3, but you're already flooded on that stuff. Like, this deck has, first of all, Tempest Jin is unreal in this deck. If you actually go to the trouble of not playing Nykthos or Mutavault or whatever, right? But, I don't think it's a given that we have to be a Tempest Jin deck. I think that there's some merit to considering, well, no, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic, but I think that there's at least some merit to consider stuff like Mutavault and Nykthos and so on. But I think that there's the other thing is that when you cut the Tempest Jins, which I'm not advocating, but if you cut the Tempest Jins, you've got more room for Thassa, God of the Sea, and you got more room for Master of Waves. But you can only play so much of that stuff. Between Gatwick, Master of Waves, Thassa, and Tempest Jin, how many of those cards are you going to play? And Brazen Borrower, for that matter.
But they specifically played, only 2 Brazen Borrower, only 2 Thassa, only 2 Gadwick, in part because of legendary considerations and in part because of curve, right? You can really only fit that many 3s in a 22-land beatdown deck, right? So you're not going to play 4 of each of those cards. But you are going to play 4 Tempest Jin because that guy is a master.
Well, I'm saying that you're going to play 4 Tempest Jins because you went to the trouble of playing 21 Islands. I think once you go to the trouble, you should for sure play all the Tempest Jins you can.
I feel like you never even use Castle Vantress in this deck.
I would not use Castle Vantress. I would use another island.
Give me an island. It's just so much volatility. It's gonna mess you up on Tempest Jin way more often than it's actually gonna get you action, I think.
I would definitely not play Castle Ventress, but whatever. This deck though is very appealing to me. I also think that there's some value in playing Wizard's Retort, and it's also not out of the question. Depending on how you shape the deck, you're a little thin on it right here. But if you were to imagine a version that had 4 Tempest Jins and 4 Thassas, you're not that far off from being a Stubborn Denial deck.
So here's the thing about this deck, Tempest Jin and Thassa. Thassa has a blue pip. Tempest Jin has 3 blue pips, right? Anything, you have 2 unbeatable threats, right? Literally any blue pip.
Yeah. Go on.
It's insane.
Dude, Gatwick is also 3 blue pips to power up your Thassa.
It's very easy to get Thassa online in this deck, and nobody's beating Thassa, right? Seriously. Card is a 5/5 indestructible that has the text, "You can't be blocked." This is a very, very good deck. And like you said at the top of the show, one of the things that was contextually kind of constricting the format was the non-existence of control-ish decks. You can't even stop these threats. I think this is a place that you might want to be. 100%.
It's a good deck. So did any of the other Actually, what do you think of Mono Red? Because Mono Red's one of the decks that also I think was benefited a lot by this wave of bans. Because not only did you not get hit by any of them, um, people not being able to once upon a time so reliably means a little bit less often are they going to go 1 into 3, and there's less incentive for so many people to play green 3 drops in the first place.
I think mono red is like really matchup dependent. Like if your opponents are playing like a bunch of 1/1 elves for 1 or like 2/1 and 1/1 black creatures and they went first and they just played like a bunch of them down and then you like get them with Goblin Chain Whirler, then you're probably going to win. And if their opponent is playing like a field deck and they don't have very good targets for cards like Wild Slash and your power card is Experimental Frenzy, you're probably going to get run over because this deck has no late game.
Mm.
I mean, it just literally has no late game. Like, its late game is Experimental Frenzy, which is very bad against late games that are really good at gumming up the board because it doesn't have much reach, right? It has like 4 Ramming Up Ruins and like, a bunch of shocks. Like, nothing that even
Lightning Strike, maybe.
Yeah, like you go to a
you're not going to play the new Flame Javelin, are you? Red, deal 4?
I don't know. I think like if I'm just looking at like the 13th place deck, like this is the definition of a red deck that wins 80% of the time against some decks, has no game against other decks. And like I think if I were going to play mono red in Pioneer, I'd kind of go the Patrick Sullivan route, which is like kind of like the upgraded last standard version with like cards like Viashino Pyromancer, stuff like that. We were just like compacting every single thing, like where you're just like getting a ton of extra oomph out of 1 or 2 mana. And like that's your game plan. Your 1 and 2 mana spells are all more leverage than what other people are doing, and hope that that's good enough. If I were going to be a mono red guy, and obviously none of these decks are like Copter decks, but now that I look at it, if you're going to be a frenzy deck, I think I wouldn't mind being a Copter deck. Like,
nah,
no,
I don't know. It doesn't. You just lose too much of the momentum. Filling your deck up with burn is a tough way to do it with Smuggler's Copter. I think Smuggler's Copter implies you want to play like at least a couple turns.
Yeah, like Burning Earth though. I could get behind Burning.
Yeah, I could too. I like that one.
If people are going to try to play Magic the Gathering against you for 10 turns, you can, and they're probably not good at removing enchantment. That's the other thing. That's the direction of the format. But, if you look at this deck and you compare it, say, like to the deck that won the tournament, which is like 10 one-mana accelerators and then like a bunch of 5s on 2, if you Wild Slash and, Shock or whatever, they're 1-drops, or you went first and they don't hit their 5, like you might just get 10 points of damage in before they can put up a plausible defense, and then hopefully the rest of your deck can win out. But if they went first and you don't have Wild Slash, you probably just lose on the spot, right? Like you can't remove a 5/5. It's not a thing your deck can do.
It's tough.
Like,
so. Awesome, man. So what do you think, man? What are you playing next week in Pioneer if you're playing in a Pioneer tournament?
I like the look of that rampish green deck. That's exciting to me. I have an unrelated question, related to Magic the Gathering, but unrelated to this topic. Non-zero chance I can take another swing at the bat. You dealt me right last time for standard PTQ. What do you like in standard? If I can assemble any deck.
Man, that is a great question.
Cards I like. These are cards I like, but I don't do.
Sure. Go ahead.
I'm asking for your opinion. I like that 6 casting cost black and green thing that blows up everything. The Casualties of War.
I think that's a good deck.
And I like Embercleave. Those are the things I like. But if you tell me Gadwick, I think I'll like Gadwick if that's what you say to like.
I don't have a tuned Gatwick list yet. I've been so focused on Pioneer. I like Gatwick a lot. I think Gatwick's going to be a key, but I don't have a tuned list yet. So if it's tomorrow, then I would just play the black-green deck.
Yeah. Like basically the deck that was like top 2 or something in that previous PTQ, but maybe with some Braskas. That's what I was thinking.
Sure. Go for it.
That's one choice. Or I was thinking like Esper Control with Gatwick in the sideboard, or like maybe a couple Gatwicks in the main deck. But I didn't have a list that had 4 Gatwicks in the main deck. But
all right.
Those are the things I was kind of thinking. But I do like Embercleave.
Yeah, but yeah, I like Embercleave the card, but I'm not sure this is going to be a good week for it. 2 weeks from now is going to be a good week for Embercleave.
Okay, well, if we're going with it,
right.
I can live with going with control elements this week. But I don't know if I can play. But if I can, I will take this under advisement. I'll probably try to go black-green.
All right. Talk to you next week, man.
Bye-bye.
Sin life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, so jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state.